Hey, it's Chris, Liege Games. Let's do this. Again, another top 10 list, but this one, again, is going to be completely different than a lot of the other ones that I've done. We've talked about the upcoming Kickstarter releases. We've talked about the upcoming Kickstarter arrivals and GameFound and crowdfunding arrivals. We've talked about the retail side of things. Now, we're going to be looking at something slightly different. These are the crowdfunding games that I did not back on crowdfunding that I am still very, 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 very interested in potentially picking up on a retail side of things. For whatever reason, there was not enough incentive, there was not enough enticement, or there was just too much, I don't know, for me to feel comfortable getting it on a crowdfunding standpoint without some firsthand knowledge, without a wider test of the environment. And so these are the games that I go, I really liked it, but also not enough to make me go, nope, not interested whatsoever, or nope, way too much exclusive for me to be interested, later. So something in between, if you will. Again, to differentiate this again from the video that I put out as well on the retail games that are only at retail. So this is not that either. That being said, let's talk about what made this list and why. Take two. Who just recorded for almost 14 minutes without any screen behind them and a black screen just showing up? That'd be this guy. Let's go. Merchants of the Dark Road, number 10. Now, again, people are getting this right now in terms of the Kickstarter backers. I guess Elf Creek Games had copies on sale at one of the conventions. I forget which one, most recently. And so people could buy it for like a marked up price from that side of things. But it's interesting because, again, I'll say that I don't do this for value, and the all-in here at $125, I see people selling that between $125 and $150, and the merchant's deluxe pledge I see going for about $75 to $125, anywhere in there. So it seems like the deluxe is actually getting a little bit more of a markup from what I've seen. And I'm not sure if it's just because the demand isn't there because you have so many people that got it in the first place that they, there's a little bit surplus, like Seventh Continent. But anyway, this was a game that I actually backed for just a very short time while it was on here, and I really looked at this one pretty heavily. But ultimately, as more of a Euro style, not really rondel, but sort of going around the city between these different buildings, and depending on when you go, depends on what's there, and just all of the different mechanisms that were going along with it in terms of the buildings and the heroes and the steeds and the watchers and the resources at the buildings in and of themselves, and the wheel that was going around in terms of the actual rondel side of things. I just looked at it and said, that's maybe too many mechanisms and maybe too many pieces for me to be able to go together, because it was hard for me to look at this game and determine whether or not it was a game that I just wouldn't be good at, but I would like, versus a game that I wouldn't be good at and also not like, if that makes sense. Like Dune Imperium is a game I'm not good at, but I really like. And the two are not mutually exclusive, but I just couldn't tell with this one. And the main reason to get it now on Kickstarter was the deluxeifications, like I mentioned. So, I mean, there was a little bit of like extra stretch goals here, but I didn't see anything marked as like Kickstarter exclusive. So maybe higher price point, but nothing that you like maybe couldn't get on the secondary market. And because of the uncertainty from the Euro side of things as a primary Amerithrash gamer, I just looked at it and said, I just can't do it from that side of things. I just can't. I'm not looking for value. I'm not looking to resell. I have had more games come in, especially in the first 4 or 5 years on crowdfunding, get sold or leave my collection, that nowadays I want to keep the ratio of things coming in and staying to a considerable degree higher than the stuff that's leaving. And I want to be able to say that and keep that to be true. So that's why this is at number 10, but I'm going to be super watching to see how people feel about it, especially as, a non-Euro person. Is this going to be a game like Dune Imperium that appeals to non-Euro people? So there you go. Number 9, we're talking about Vivid Memories, sort of a combination of like Summer Pavilion, Azul, and maybe like Sagrada, or one of those sort of abstracty games, but sort of a little bit more thinky as well. And it was that little bit more thinky of the tile drafting, collecting side of things that made me hesitate. And I mean, $50 is a great price point for this with the deluxeifications, but again, it was a deluxeification thing. And again, Azul, okay, the thing with this is, when I want to play something more complex, I want to play something more complex. When I want to play something lighter, I want to play something lighter. There's not always this, I want to play something slightly more complex that outstays my thinking ability for that night, or sort of is that in between. And that was my big concern with this one is, do I really want some of those in-betweeners when it comes to this, where it's a light style abstract look, but it's more of a heavy style play? And for me, I just couldn't do it because, again, the main reason to get it was the deluxifications. And I don't, or am not the biggest fan of deluxifications unless I'm really in love with the game. And so I wasn't in love with the game. I decided to pass on it. Because, I mean, it looks beautiful. I think it's going to be a very, very good game. But it's sort of that in between. And I'm not sure, personally, my collection and my play style fits well with that. So, again, a little bit thinkier, a little bit deeper, a little bit harder than Azul. And I think it's going to be a good spatial puzzle for people. But for me, I decided to pass on it. And I would love to play it to see if it's not too heavy. And if it's not, then there's a good chance I'll end up getting it at some point. Number 8, Bardwood Grove from Final Frontier Games. Again, as a Euro style game, it was really appealing. The biggest turnoffs, though, was again the Euro style and just the unknown from the Euro deck building mechanism mashup. Because I like the idea of having 2 cards and using one here and using the other for a completely separate action or power. But the $110 pledge level for this, for a game that I was unsure of in the triple digits, I'm having trouble doing those other ones for 30 or 50 or 75. So you've got 110 to get most of the stuff that you need, because again, if you're going to get something uncertain, you should get the one that's going to be able to potentially mitigate the least amount of risk. And that is the deluxification and the collector's edition. And that's a lot of money to put in. Again, the game is beautiful. The asymmetry between the bards and the gameplay and the evolution of how you go and the deck building. Again, the deck building sounds amazing, and I love the idea of this. But I just said, you know what? Again, Euro-y, even though it's using some of my other things, that's a lot of money to wager when I can get Dune Imperium and the expansion for half that. Right? So that's my biggest holdup, and that's why I'm going to watch it very closely again at the retail side of things, and could easily see this because, again, standees or little meeple guys instead. It's singing all my other tunes that I'm happy with. So I just had to hold off on it from the, again, unsure on the mechanism and the thematic incorporation tied in there with a personal fit. So there you go. Number 7, Meeples and Monsters. AEG putting out a lot of solid stuff like Space Base especially. And this reminded me of sort of an smash up, a Venn diagram of 2 of the worker placements that rest in peace are no longer in my collection, but that I enjoyed well enough to have them in my collection in the first place. And that was Lords of Waterdeep and Champions of Midgard. And it sort of gives me the vibes of both, and it's doing Meeples. So the price point, again, the price point was really good. Of the 4 of these, this price point is probably by far the best at a $50 price point. And you're getting the free expansion, you're getting the upgraded Meeples, and it was just looking really good until I watched Rado's playthrough, and it's like your workers don't stay out on the board. Your workers come back after every turn, so there's no interaction there whatsoever. And the big thing I like about Dune Imperium, if we're going to talk about that as the comparison to this, is that your workers stay out there, and it really cramps other people's styles and forces them to interact with you and pivot on their plans that they had beforehand. The recruiting of the new workers, the upgrading of your towns, the fighting off of the monsters, again, all things that I really enjoy doing to give the traditional Euro a little bit more interaction and take that and dynamic. But I just couldn't do it with not leaving the workers out there. I would really love to play this one and see if that is really a detriment or if it's just more in my head. But again, it was one that I just couldn't risk. How different is the retail price as well as the retail components going to look? Again, if the big difference is I only get the regular Meeples at retail, again, that's not a loss for me from that side of things. Solo game is what it is. But again, I think it's a very, very solid game. This one could be a very, very, very good intro, just even maybe a slight step up from those other 2 that I mentioned earlier. So I could see this one getting a lot of support and a lot of popularity on the retail side of things. So I will have my eye on it very closely. Number 6, I backed this one, actually. I just didn't upgrade my pledge. I got a $1 backer on this one. And this one is slightly different than all of the other ones so far on this list as well, because I actually own Glenmore 2. It is probably a top 10 to 15 game for me in my collection. Unlike the other ones on this list so far, the reason that I did not upgrade this one was not because I didn't like it, not because I had concerns about it, but because I haven't played the base game enough. And it doesn't matter how good it is if I just don't play it enough. I mean, this is adding 4 new modules to this game. And I can tell you right now, without any hesitation, I haven't played a quarter of the modules that are in the base game in the first place, because it comes with like 8, as you can see here. This one starts at 9. And I love this game. But it's not the easiest game to get to the table. It requires a little bit of overhead. It's a little bit longer, especially when you're learning or relearning now. And if I haven't played the other ones, Do I really need this? And it's at retail already right now. You can pick it up on retail. And there wasn't a huge difference from retail, I don't believe, in this case. And it's even probably slightly cheaper. But again, it will probably end up in my collection at some point because I do love me some Glen 2 Chronicles. But again, until I've played the base more, I mean, it's sort of like El Grande. I haven't even thought about incorporating the expansions into El Grande yet. I haven't played it enough. I haven't beaten that dead horse enough to, need something new. Because again, even though it was a 35 euro pledge, which is again not very expensive, even though I can get it slightly cheaper again, supporting publishers on crowdfunding, 35 euros, 45, 50 bucks adds up, whether it's this, Vivid Memories, whatever it may be. Doesn't matter how cheap it is if it's unplayed, because think about how many of those cheaper ones you have unplayed. Is that really any better to have 4 or 5 cheaper ones like this unplayed versus one, $150 one unplayed? No. You could argue it's worse. This might take up more space even. Maybe not, depending on what the game is. But like, on the other flip side of things, I bought more of Marvel United because you know what? Even though it was like $200, I play the heck out of that. That was my most played non-kids game in 2021. And I guarantee we're going to play the heck out of it in 2022. So just from that standpoint, it makes it worth it, even though it's a larger price point. I'm getting larger value from the play standpoint, not from the cha-ching standpoint. So again, no question about whether or not this is going to be good. I think this looks freaking fantastic. It's just, I need to get the other played more before I pick this up. And I'm okay with waiting right now, which is weird to say because a year or two ago, I would not have been that way. There you go, Glenmore 2. So moving on to number 5, Adventure Tactics, Adventures in Alchemy. Now you may be wondering, again, as you've heard me espout on this channel, that this was one that as much as I loved it, I didn't necessarily find myself wanting the miniatures. I am really a big fan of standees, acrylic standees, wooden pieces, much more than plastic chunks, as much as I have literally been surrounded by them by a good portion of the number of games that I have. Well, this one is at number 5 because I got a copy of Adventure Tactics with the Hero Quest pack. So I am in the process of hopefully going to be able to play this with my 7-year-old at some point in the next couple months. Hopefully, maybe. He seems, more interested in the Nintendo Switch. Side note, back to video. So now that I have that, and I know I'm going to like it, it's just a matter of can I get the more stuff. And this stuff isn't at retail yet. This one isn't out. It's not going to be out for a while. I mean, if estimates are even halfway right in this, you're talking Q3 in 2022, probably closer to Q4 at the retail side of things. And there were some slight tweaks and changes. I would like the side quests. I would like the expansion. And I will just see. I don't need I think all of these enemy packs and the hero packs are mostly the miniature stuff. I think maybe there's a little more. I don't really remember though. Again, all of the exclusive stuff was non-gameplay. So I love this. I love this. And this is Adventures in Alchemy. So again, that's another reason I would really pick it up. Again, Act 2 boss, hard modes on all these things. Again, something super awesome. So not only can you play it with your kids, you can play it with your game group as well. And the overhead is really low on this game, but it's got enough that it reminds me of the closest thing to Final Fantasy Tactics. Of the video games that I would want being made into board games, that's like pretty much near the top of the list anyway. And again, I mean, I just don't need all of the other minis that I think that this is offering. Yeah, then I just don't. And that's okay. Because I think if they split it out like they did last time, this is probably actually a really good value now that I think about it. And if I wouldn't have been able to get this on the secondary market, I probably would have done this. And I maybe should have just done this right here. But I didn't have the base game at the time. So, yeah. I just couldn't. And yeah, here are the enemy packs. So here's the miniatures. Which, again, if you want them, awesome. They're just not for me. I'm very happy with the standees that are in these things. And I'm very happy to have them all. So I will pick up some of this stuff or a majority of this stuff on the secondary market in terms of whatever that looks like. But again, as a dungeon crawler, I can play with everything across the board. And now that I have a copy, I'm just super happy about. And I can't shout it from the rooftops enough. It's already gotten enough critical acclaim. You can check it out if you're interested for more. Now, number 4 is going to be a big departure on the type of game. But this is Stationfall. And again, more of the reason that the group size, but also the miniature. Because the miniatures were going to be a total of $100 for this. As like a 4 to 8 player deduction, take that, much higher level, deeper version of Coup, or even, Mafia, or One Night Ultimate Werewolf. Only just if it was like more of a Euro game. And so I just looked at this and I said, I just don't, the miniatures I can just do without. And I just couldn't back it for the time at that price, because I said, like I do with a lot of these, as much as I love it, it's probably going to be cheaper. This base pledge, being a minimalist, as they say, at retail. And if it's not, you know what? And they just sell it through their shop and it's going to cost me 65 or $70. Well, you know what? So be it. So be it. And if I support the publisher that way at the retail side of things, I'm awesome with that. Because I think the one exclusive was like the Project X miniature, again, which the concept of this game is sort of alien as a deductive reasoning game, only completely different, is just what I sort of pictured Nemesis would be in the first place. It was what this is. And so I just love the idea of this. This is an absolutely massive game, but I think the consensus was like 4 to 8 is sort of the sweet point. And so as someone who plays 2 to 3 most, 4 sometimes, 5 hardly never, that was the other big side of things. And if we're really being completely transparent here, that was probably the bigger thing, because I could have easily bought one of the higher levels here, but I looked at it as, do I want this versus can I get it played? And the can I get it played was more overwhelming than the miniatures, because I think this is going to be a freaking fantastic game. I think when people get this game and play it at those higher counts, I think this is going to be one of the standout games of 2022. Now, again, where are they? Because it says December 2021 for the production and the delivery, so I'm not sure how much they're overdue. So per the latest update right here with this one, it actually says Q2 in 2022. So I think second half of 2022, people are going to be talking about this one big time. So keep this one on your radar. Number 3, we'll get back to the usual suspects. I'm a level 99 game fanboy. I love Exceed. My review for Exceed will be coming out, if it hasn't come out shortly, about how much it's my ode to love of Exceed. So if you want to hear me espouse that and why, check that out. But this is, again, as a 2-player dueling game. When you talk about those, when people talk about recommendations, this was always sort of the 4 to the 1, 2, and 3 in some order that people always said in terms of Exceed, Battlecon, and Yomi. This was always 4 because it had been imported and brought over previously by someone else that I forget now, but they're remastering it, redoing it, completely redoing the art and the iconography and the text. And again, it's a solid game of a dueler. And now it's different because you take 2 of these goddesses, take their decks, they each have 10 card decks, and you combine them and choose 10 cards out of both of them. And so people don't like it as much as those other ones because it's not as much perfect information, because the game is easily won or lost even prior to the game being actually played if you choose the wrong cards out of the 20 cards that you take. But I should have backed it. I should have backed it here. I regret this. I didn't know how much I would like Exceed. And this one just looks like it would be 1A to 1B with me and Exceed at this point. And so I'm going to probably get it at retail no matter what. This is probably one that's going to end up in my collection. It's more just, again, a matter of when, not if. And I just looked at it and said, I don't really need promos. I want those promos now. I don't even know what those promos were. What were they, actually? 18 promo Vigor cards. And they're going to be available at Kickstarter and online game store. I don't even know what Vigor cards are. I want them. Okay. Again, I'm totally in line with this type of game and this situation. And again, there was no mystery about what this game was going to entail, because there have already been 2 iterations of it and people love it for what it is already. So there was no confusion, or was this going to be a good game? No, it's taking a good game that was already there and just making it localized over here now again. So that's number 3. Now, number 2 is going to surprise you, and it's going to be sort of a little bit of a controversial one to be on this list, but that is Dwellings of Eldervale. I am eventually, like several other things I have espoused in other videos, going to end up with this in my collection. It's just a matter of time. But I refuse to pay scalping prices right now. I probably should have bought it when Breaking Games sent out those like pseudo secret emails saying, hey, on this date, we're going to have stuff in the store. I just didn't, because even then it was a decent price, but people are selling the deluxe for like $250 and the legendary for like $300 to $400. And I guess I'm completely fine with the wooden stuff. I don't need the miniatures. I wish they would just have one completely wooden without any of the miniatures, because there was some like gameplay content with some of the legendary one here, with some of the legendary stretch goals or the echoes that had like a little bit of gameplay but not a ton, and I just don't like that. And so if I could get the deluxe for this price, I would buy it. I am tempted for the standard, but I want some of the additional gameplay that comes with the deluxe here. And I am imagining at some point in the next year or two, because again, this is not going to necessarily be that way for long. It's going to be a question of, as I've heard rumored, that they're going to have another expansion or something along those lines. Now, if you go over to the latest update on Dwellings, they have some more announcements concerning them for the next few months. So, I mean, I'm guessing that's what it is, because it would be weird. It would be almost burning money at this point if you didn't either reprint this and offer it through the store again, or reprint it through another crowdfunding campaign, with how popular and how in demand that it is. So I would be surprised if we don't hear, again, as they said here, a couple months. That's what I would have said too, because it's been quiet for a long time. So if you need a summary of this, I mean, this is sort of a very interactive Euro worker placement style game with a ton of interaction. And what is this, like something like 8 to 10 different factions that you're using, manipulating element cards, monster cards that you're battling against, magic cards, different hex tiles that you're being placed out, and just a little bit of everything. The production, they say, is off the charts. It's got solo, it's got deluxing, adding there, wooden resources, the monster stuff there with the miniatures, the sound bases. That's really the only thing I didn't want, but there was some of this down here with the monster cards, unique abilities, and the bonus hexes that I didn't want to pay for like this price for, with the miniatures and the sound bases. So that was ultimately the reason, because this is probably the closest recently from a Euro worker placement style game that I've backed on Kickstarter, and I actually had a pledge for this and I canceled it. So again, I'm probably going to pick it up if it comes back to crowdfunding, or if it comes back to retail when it ever does. So I imagine one of those two announcements will come sometime shortly, but that's why it's number 2, slightly controversial, because I mean, it's not really up my ilk, and it's not really I guess totally guaranteed to be at retail from that side of things. So number 1 though, number 1 is one that I don't regret skipping, but I also regret skipping. I knew this was going to be good. I knew Role Player Adventures was going to be good. I looked at this and I said, Role Player is awesome. Role Player Adventures is going to be even awesomer. I went there. However, I looked at this and I said, along with the other games that they have done in the past with their other role player games, none of it is exclusive. And so if you can wait, you'll get it at about the same price, or even maybe slightly cheaper. And it's looking to be about slightly cheaper, minus maybe the price of shipping, which again is no big deal. $20 either way. If $20 either way is the make it or break it, on like a $100, $150 project, you know, it's probably time to be very tightening up your belt for the budget. But again, people are awesome about it. Again, $100, which is about what it's going for, slightly more, slightly less, depending on the online store. The problem is most of the pre-orders are now sold out. So it'll probably be a second printing for me, or getting on the secondary market. There's been a couple people I've seen that are selling this close to $135. So if I can get it for close to $135, maybe plus shipping, I'll probably buy it that way. Or again, you know, I wouldn't be surprised that this one either gets a reprint shortly after it's all sold out, after it comes. But I think it's not estimated until like June 2022-ish now for the retail side of things, which again, I can easily wait for. I'm in no rush. I have no shortage of stuff to play at this point. But again, this is one that I could easily see slotting near the top of my list in terms of ease of accessibility. People have already been raving about it, and I knew it was going to be good. I just couldn't pull the trigger for $135 with no exclusives during the campaign. It's more of one of those, again, like I said earlier, how and where do you draw the line in terms of supporting people? And for just some reason, I just couldn't pull the trigger at that point. So if this had come about nowadays, same thing with Dwellings, I would probably do it. Because I looked at both of those and I said, those are both going to be instant hits, but are they going to be hits for me? I'm not sure. And do I get them now versus waiting later? And sometimes you swing and you hit on those things, and sometimes you swing and you miss. And for me, these last 3 were swing and misses. And you know what? I'm okay with admitting that. And sometimes I mess up, and I should have gone zig when I zagged, and zag when I zigged. So there you go. That's it. Numbers 1 through 10. What are ones that you are, I don't want to say regretting not backing, but ones that you go similarly, I can get that later. You know, I'm okay with getting it later from that side of things. Is there anything that stands out from you? Do you share any of these on this list? I would be surprised if a vast number of you don't also agree with the Dwellings, as weird as that one was to sort of, it sort of was like, which one of these is not like the other still when I talk about it compared to the other ones? But I would imagine a lot of you are in the same boat with that one with me, as much as I'm also not necessarily the target audience, and I would have concerns about me not liking it, but I could also see it being more like Dune Imperium as well. So a game that I was surprised to like with a worker placement emphasis. There you go. That's all I got. Nice list there. 10 games. Nice talking points. Hopefully it's interesting for you. Generate some conversation. Let me know what you think in the comments. Oh, by the way, spoilers. I'm going to start ramping up the Patreon, I think. I'm going to start ramping that up. So you guys who are backing me already, I'm going to give you some more incentive to maybe increase the pledge, but also maybe to attract more people. Just totally was thinking about that earlier tonight before I filmed this. So I'm going to start trying to do that as well and incorporate that into a couple videos so that more people are aware, because not everyone's going to watch this one, but you will watch some of the other ones and I'll catch you somewhere. That's all I got rambling here. Spoilers alert. Other spoilers alert here right now. I'm going to be reviewing this game shortly. For those of you that are watching. Oh yeah. Don't let the art fool you, folks. It's the real deal. Okay. Peace out. Stay classy. I'll see you around. Have a great day.